Now read this. Hello and welcome back to Now Read This. I'm up north from Florida and in a beautiful place. It's that little pond back here. Gorgeous countryside. Hope that everybody in Florida that is on the channel and watches stuff got out just fine. Life goes on. God is good. I hope the audio is good too. There's wind. Yeah. Praying for my books and my piano mostly, because I had to leave those things. Everything else is good. Couldn't be happier. But, you know, it's kind of a weird place to be right now. Where you don't know if your house is gonna survive. But there's more important things than that. So anyway, welcome back to Now Read This. I did bring this one and then the next book in the series just to float us for a while. This is the Chronicles of Prydain, Book 2, The Black Cauldron, by Lloyd Alexander. These are the final 2 chapters in the book. Chapter 19, The Warlord. Before the startled Terran could draw his blade, a guard seized him and quickly lashed his arms behind his back. The bard too was seized. Screaming and kicking, Eilonwy fought vainly. For an instant Gurgi broke loose from his captors and flung himself towards King Morgant. But a warrior struck him brutally to the ground, leaped astride the limp figure, and trussed him tightly. "Traitor!" Eilonwy shrieked. "Liar! You dare to steal—" "Silence her," Morgant said coldly, and in another moment a gag muffled her cries. Frantically, Terran struggled to reach the girl's side before he was thrown down and his legs secured with thongs. Morgant watched silently, his features fixed and without expression. The guards stepped away from the helpless companions. Morgant gestured for the warriors to leave the tent. Terran, whose head still spun with confusion and disbelief, strained against his bonds. "You are already a traitor," he cried. "Will you now be a murderer? We are under the protection of Gwydion. You will not escape his wrath." "I do not fear Gwydion," answered Morgant, "and his protection is worthless to you now. Worthless indeed to all Prydain. Even Gwydion is powerless against the Cauldron-born." Terran stared at him in horror. "You would not dare to use the Crochan against your own kinsmen, your own people. This is even more foul than treachery and murder." "Do you believe so?" Morgant replied. "Then you have more lessons to learn than that of obedience. The Cauldron belongs to him who knows how to keep it, and how to use it. It is a weapon ready for a hand. For years Aron was a master of the Cauldron, yet he lost it. Is this not proof he was unworthy, that he did not have the strength or cunning to prevent it slipping from his grasp? Elidir, the proud fool, believed he could keep it. He is hardly fit to be cast into it." "What?" Terran cried. "Will you set yourself to rival Aron?" "To rival him?" Morgant asked, with a hard smile. "No, to surpass him. I know my worth, though I have chafed in the service of lesser men than I. Now I see the moment is ripe. There are few," he continued haughtily, "who understand the uses of power, and few who dare to use it when it is offered them. Power such as this was offered once to Gwydion," Morgant went on. "He refused it. I shall not fail to take it. Shall you?" "I?" asked Terran, with a terrified glance at Morgant. King Morgant nodded. His eyes were hooded, but his falcon's face was keen and avid. "Gwydion has spoken of you," he said. "He told me little, but that little is of interest. You are a bold youth, and perhaps more than that. How much more, I do not know. But I do know you are without family, without name or future. You can expect nothing. And yet," Morgant added, "you can expect everything." "I would not offer this to one such as Elidir," Morgant continued. "He is too prideful, weakest where he believes himself strong. Do you remember I told you that I know good metal? There is much that is possible with you, Terran of Caerdalban, and this is what I offer. Swear that you shall serve me as your liege lord, and when the time is right, you shall be my war leader, second only to me in all Prydain." "Why do you offer me this?" Terran cried. "Why should you choose me?" "As I have said," Morgant answered, "there is much you might achieve if the way is opened for you. Do not deny you have dreamed long of glory. It is not impossible for you to find it, if I judge you well." "Judge me well," Terran flung back, "and you would know I scorn to serve an evil traitor." "I have no time to hear you vent your rage," Morgant said. "Many plans must be made between now and dawn. I shall leave you with this to consider. Will you be first among my warriors, or first among my cauldron-born?" "Give me to the cauldron, then," Terran shouted. "Cast me in it now, even as I live." "You have called me traitor," Morgant answered, smiling. "Do not call me fool. I, too, know the secret of the cauldron. Do you think I would have had the Kraken shatter even before it began its work? Yes," he went on, "I, too, have been to the marshes of Morva, long before the cauldron was taken from Anuvan, for I knew that sooner or later Gwydion must make this move against Aron, and so I prepared myself. Did you pay a price for the Kraken? I, too, paid a price for the knowledge of its workings. I know how to destroy it, and I know how to make it yield a harvest of power." "But you were bold, none the less, to hope to trick me," Morgant added. "You fear me," he said, drawing closer to Terran, "and there are many in Prydain who do, yet you defy me. To dare that, there are few. This is rare metal indeed, ready to be tempered." Terran was about to speak, but the war leader raised his hand. "Say no more. Think, instead, carefully. If you refuse, you shall become a voiceless, mindless slave, without even hope of death to release you from your bondage." Terran's heart sank, but he raised his head proudly. "If that is the destiny laid on me, it will be a harder destiny than you believe," Morgant said, his eyes flickering. "A warrior does not fear to give up his own life, but will he sacrifice that of his comrades?" Terran gasped with horror as Morgant went on. "Yes," said the war leader. "One by one your companions shall be slain and given to the Kraken. Who will it devour before you cry a halt? Will it be the bard, or the shabby creature that serves you, or the young princess? They shall go before you, even as you watch, and at the last, yourself. Weigh this carefully," said the warlord. "I shall return for your answer." He flung his black cloak about his shoulders and strode from the tent. Terran struggled against his bonds, but they held firm. He sank back and bowed his head. The bard, who had been silent this while, heaved a sorrowful sigh. "Oh, in the marshes of Morva," he said. "If I had only known, I should have asked Ordu to change me into a toad. At the time, I didn't care for the idea. As I think of it now, it's a happier life than being a cauldron warrior. At least there would have been dew circles to dance in." "He will not succeed in this," Terran said. "Somehow we must find a way to escape. We dare not lose hope." "I agree absolutely," Fluda answered. "Your general idea is excellent. It's only the details that are lacking. Lose hope? By no means. The Flam is always hopeful. I intend to go on hoping," he added ruefully, "even when they come and pop me into the Kraken." Gurgi and Elidir still lay unconscious, but Eilonwy had not ceased working furiously at the gag, and now, at last, she succeeded in forcing it out of her mouth. "Morgant!" she gasped. "He'll pay for this! Why, I thought I'd stifle! He might have kept me from talking, but he didn't keep me from listening. When he comes back, I hope he tries to put me in the cauldron first. He'll soon find out who he's dealing with. He'll wish he'd never thought of making his own cauldron born." Terran shook his head. "By then it will be too late. We shall be slain before we are taken to the Kraken. No, there is only one hope. None of you shall be sacrificed because of me. I have decided what I must do." "Decided?" Alonri burst out. "The only thing you have to decide is how we shall escape from this tent. If you're thinking of anything else, you're wasting your time. That's like wondering whether to scratch your head when a boulder's about to fall on it." "This is my decision," Terran said slowly. "I will accept what Morgant offers." "What?" Alonri exclaimed in disbelief. "For a while, I thought you'd actually learned something from Adain's brooch. How can you think to accept?" "I shall swear my allegiance to Morgant," Terran went on. "He shall have my word, but shall not make me keep it. An oath given under threat of death cannot bind me. This way, at least, we may gain a little time." "Are you sure Morgant's warriors didn't strike you on the head and you didn't notice it?" Alonri asked sharply. "Do you imagine Morgant won't guess what you plan? He has no intention of keeping his part of the bargain. He'll slay us all anyway. Once you're in his clutches, I mean more than you are, you won't get out of them. Morgant might have been one of the greatest war leaders in Prydain, but he's turned evil, and if you try to come to terms with him, well, you'll find it's worse than being a Cauldron warrior. Though I admit that isn't very attractive either." Terran was silent for a time. "I fear you are right," he said, "but I don't know what else we can do." "Get out first," Alonri advised. "We can decide what else when the time comes. Somehow it's hard to think about where to run as long as your hands and feet are tied up." With much difficulty, the tightly bound companions struggled closer and sought to undo each other's thongs. The knots refused to yield, slipping from their numb fingers and only bit more deeply into their flesh. Again and again, the companions returned to their labours until they lay breathless and exhausted. Even Alonri no longer had the strength to speak. They rested a while, hoping to gain new energy, but the night moved as a heavy, tormented dream, and the moments they passed in fitful drowsing did nothing to restore them, nor did they lose too much precious time. Morning, Terran knew, would come swiftly. The cold, grey trickle of dawn had already begun to seep into the tent. All night, as they had toiled, Terran had heard the movements of warriors in the clearing, the voice of Morgant crying harsh, urgent commands. Now he dragged himself painfully to the curtain at the entrance of the tent, pressed his cheek against the cold ground, and tried to peer out. He could see little, for the rising mists swirled above the turf, and he made out only shadow shapes hastening back and forth. The warriors, he imagined, were gathering their gear, perhaps making ready to strike camp. A long, pitiful whinny came from the line of tethered horses, and he recognized it as that of Islamak. The Kraken still squatted where it had been. Terran made out the dark, brooding mass, and it seemed to him, in a flare of horror, that its mouth gaped greedily. Terran rolled over and pulled himself back to the companions. The bard's features were pale. He appeared half-dazed by fatigue and suffering. Alonri raised her head and looked silently at him. "What?" murmured Fluda. "Has the moment already come for us to say farewell?" "Not yet," Terran said, "though Morgant will be here soon enough, I fear. Then our time will be upon us. How does Gurgi fare?" "The poor thing is still unconscious," Alonri answered. "Leave him as he is. It is kinder thus." Elidir stirred and groaned feebly. Slowly his eyes opened. He winced, turned his blood-stained, broken face to Terran, and studied him for a time, as though without recognition. Then his torn lips moved in his familiar, bitter grimace. "And so we are together again, Terran of Caer Dallben," he said. "I did not expect us to meet so soon." "Have no fear, son of Penlarco," Terran answered. "It shall not be for long." Elidir bowed his head. "For that I am truly sorry. I would make up the ill I have done all of you." "Would you have said the same if the cauldron was still in your hands?" Terran asked quietly. Elidir hesitated. "I shall speak the truth. I do not know. The black beast you saw is a harsh master. Its claws are sharp, yet I did not feel them until now. But I tell you this," Elidir continued, trying to lift himself. "I stole the cauldron out of pride, not evil. I swear to you, On whatever honour remains to me, I would not have used it. Yes, I would have taken your glory from my own, but I too would have borne the Crochan to Gwydion and offered it for destruction. Believe this much of me." Taran nodded. "I believe you, Prince of Penlarco, and now perhaps even more than you believe it yourself." A wind had risen, moaning through the trees and shaking the tent. The curtain blew back. Taran saw the warriors forming in ranks behind the cauldron.
Hey, you want to buy something? You can check the description for my books and audiobooks. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.